Francesco, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to welcome you on this show because you have experience with machine learning, with data science, with AWS. So here we are to learn more from your experience and also to share something for technical recruiters who are in touch with people like yourself and they may not really know what this machine learning actually means. Before we dive deeper, why don't you tell us a bit more how you actually got into machine learning? I know that you have a different background, so what was the transition like?
First of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's a real pleasure. So yeah, let me try to remember. It was like quite some time ago. So I think that it was by pure chance. So I'm a chemist. I'm a chemist by background. So I graduated from college and then I worked like a couple of years in the aerospace industry, close to Rome. I'm Italian, so that's where I come from and where I studied. And after a while, I got really bored. So I said, okay, I need to. I didn't know how to code that much, honestly. So yeah, a little bit of Python back in the day in college, but nothing much. So I said, okay, I need to learn how to code. And then I said, okay, well, I need some sort of motivation because what am I gonna do? I just open up my laptop and start coding some random stuff. So what am I gonna code? And then by pure chance, I stumbled upon this course by Andrew Ng. So the ultra famous Coursera course about machine learning, which back in the day was in MATLAB. And I said, oh my God, that's it, that's the one. So even if it was in MATLAB, I said, this looks amazing. There were robots all over. It was back in 2013. And I had absolutely no clue what that meant and what I was getting into. But I got the course, I finished it, and then I was in love totally. So I said, okay, let me replace that and let me translate that from MATLAB to Python, and that's where everything started. Now I lead the verification team, the machine learning verification team at Bolt, the company in the ride-hailing business. So I think it kind of worked out.
Nice, nice. Well, that was a crazy journey, to go from a chemist to now leading a team of machine learning engineers. So there are different roles related to data, right? Data engineer, data analyst, machine learning engineer. So based on your experience working with people across the different data spectrum, which ones would you say are better for people who are getting into the data space?
uh, that's an interesting one. So it's I remember that uh, so okay, fun fact, I joined Bolt twice, actually. So back in the day in 2018 was my first time. It was called Taxify. Then I left and joined back in 2021. It was named Bolt, and I remember that back in 2018 we literally had meetings in which we with the recruiters, in which we were like trying to figure out the good namings for roles. So it was like, okay, so shall we call this machine learning intelligence engineer, machine learning engineer, data scientist? Like how should we call it? So that is to say that basically, unfortunately, I think we are still at a stage in which like those names don't really mean much, and they are totally dependent on the company, at least in my experience. So I probably, if I wanted to get into the data world, I would apply to pretty much anything which ranges from data engineer to data scientist to machine learning engineer, and then I would talk. Of course, if I get through the screening, I would probably like talk to the recruiter and try to understand exactly what they mean, because they are widely different. So I remember when I applied to a job at Facebook 4 years ago, and as a data scientist. And I recall the recruiter. I went to the screening, and the recruiter told me these exact words: "So you're a data scientist. You're not gonna train a model ever." Uh, I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? So am I not? I mean, what is a data scientist then? A data scientist is a data analyst. was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. So then what is that? What then who's training the models? Well, the machine learning engineers are training the models. Like, okay, so but then am I not allowed to do any of that? Like, no. We have like a clear separation of tasks. So like you're a data scientist, you don't train models, period. Right, okay. So you're supporting, the machine learning engineers in the data exploration and then blah blah blah. So that kind of like sets a little bit the stage. There's a lot of confusion and people don't really know. And so even now, data scientist is probably like someone who does a lot more statistics than the machine learning engineer. A machine learning engineer is who kind of trains models and then deploys them to production. Meaning is as interaction with production systems and with software engineers. But there's a lot of like the gray area is very big. So I would probably apply to anything containing data in the name,
Mm.
and then figuring out what the company is looking for and what they actually mean by that name.
Yeah, and that's very interesting that you say this because lots of companies interpret the roles differently. Is there any framework, any competency framework that you have heard of, or you may be using in the company involved? Any competency framework that would kind of standardize these roles?
Yeah, we do. I mean, at some point, we kind of reach an agreement, and so like we have some rules, and as you said, like competency matrices, like in so to make sure that people like fall in some sort of grid, candidates for some sort of grid. So in our case, the data analyst is so we have a data analyst, and then we have actually now that I think about it, it's an interesting point because we have data scientists and machine learning engineers, and there's no clear difference between data scientists and machine learning engineers. This like says a lot about like that
Hmm.
we probably don't really care. The real difference is between data analyst and the rest. So data analyst is a guy who's performing analytics. And by analytics, I mean so it's very close to the business, very close to the product manager, and that's the person who answer questions like, okay, shall we do product A or product B? Do we run an A/B test? About this feature. Is this working? Is it not working? What is the root cause of problem Y? And can we break it down and bridge it to some like business metrics?
Hmm.
That's the data analyst. But at least for Bolt, data analysts are very technical. So if they need to build models to answer business questions, they can totally do that. And we also have business data analysts who are so technical that at some point they actually get into real machine learning. And okay, so this sounds awkward because like real machine learning, it's something like awkwardness because it's there's no real machine learning. Like those guys are actually training models because they need it, because they actually they need to answer business questions. So they at the end of the day, yeah, they are machine learning engineers as well. They're probably not getting to the end of the spectrum, which means that they're not pushing those models in production and they're not maintaining them. Then
Hmm.
this is the data analyst. Then there is like the data scientist, machine learning engineer. And that I think depends on the team. So we have teams at Bolt. We are more or less technical. For example, I work in a computer vision team. So my team is mostly like working on computer vision tasks, face matching and face detection and OCR, so optical character recognition, text detection, all sorts of stuff. Those are more like in the deep learning uh, domain, so neural networks, and they're more technical. So in that case, we look actually for software engineers with a machine learning twist
Hmm.
rather than machine learning engineers with a software twist.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that makes sense. So we look like for the technical part of the spectrum.
Hmm.
But that, the shades like change between team and team. And those are folks who need to be able to build a model, debug it, deploy it, and then maintain it. High, like massive traffic, massive scale. This thing needs to work.
Hmm.
Um, and then we have the data engineers. data engineers is yet another role at Bolt, and those are like software engineers. Period. Those are software engineers who are building our machine learning stack. So we are operating on AWS at Bolt, and so AWS offers a bunch of services for machine learning. But are they good enough to be wired up into a production system as they are? And the answer is not really. I mean, depends on the scale, on the where you are as a company in your journey. Probably 5 years ago, it was enough for us to call an API and call it a day. But
Mhm.
now, like, the complexity is much bigger, so we cannot just call the service and rely on it. We have to build wrappers. We have to make sure that we build tooling so that everybody from in the company in the machine learning area can use those kind of tools. And the responsibility of those tooling is on data engineers.
Mhm.
Uh, but then we have data engineers in the machine learning space. We have data engineers who are actually responsible for the databases, and so they have nothing to do with machine learning, but they're still building the tooling and the infra to support analytics.
Mhm.
But still, they're still data engineers. So I
Mhm.
would say data engineers, software engineers, period. Data analysts, those are probably like business analysts, if on the more technical side, if they have to be converted into like other companies jargon. And then we have data scientists, machine learning engineers, and according to the team, they are more or less software engineers with a machine learning twist, or machine learning engineers with a software twist.
Mhm. It's very, very interesting differentiation. And now, when you talk about the data engineers who do the tooling, I'm kind of wondering, and probably a lot of recruiters listening to this also wonder, like, is a data engineer not working with data? Because that's what usually they do, right? They are supposed to, in the good old days, they were migrating data from one database to another. So in your setup, it's more about preparing the tools for machine learning engineers, or do they also process some data here and there?
They do, yeah, they do. Like in some cases, it again it depends on the project. So like for instance, we have we have a team which is called the model life cycle team, and this is like the team which is responsible for building our entire machine learning infrastructure. But then machine learning infrastructure is a very wide and vague term. Like, what does that mean? So there are then people in that team who are working on figuring out all the deployment tooling of models and then the monitoring in production, and that has pretty much like nothing to do with moving data anywhere or handling with data. They're just like building like the services and writing software around it.
Mhm.
Then there are like other folks who instead are building like profiling, and profiling means you are let's say that you're building like a model which is needs to figure out if your customer is gonna click on a banner or not, and like what you need as a feature. So what you need as data to make that prediction. I don't know. You probably would want to know the history of that customer, if the customer, how many purchases you made in the last 30 days, and like how many visits you made to the website in the last in the last week or so. And this data needs to be updated in real time. Because if the guy accessed the website 3 minutes before, you probably want to know. Like, you're probably gonna make a difference in the prediction. And that means that a machine learning engineer is relying on this kind of data to be always available in real time and needs to be recomputed very, very frequently. Now, who's in charge of that? That is the data engineer, So that is because that's called profiling or feature store, depending on how you call it. That is part of our machine learning stack or infrastructure. And so those are the data engineers. And then you might argue, well, okay, well, and the data engineer who's building that thing is very much into data, a lot more than
Sure.
the guy who's building like the deployment stack. So I guess it depends on the project, right? But then, like, probably like the clear difference is then like a data engineer is never responsible for a specific model, for a specific project. They're always building tooling which need to be used across verticals, across teams. So they don't get like they don't have like one single project which is like their own baby, and then they are responsible for that one. Like no, they're building stuff which is agnostic,
Hmm.
as much agnostic as possible in terms of the framework.
Oh, cool, cool, great. And now, when you also mentioned these different roles within the data team, a lot of recruiters may also wonder how to get someone really interested in jobs like these now when there is such a huge talent shortage on the market, and data engineers or machine learning engineers have so many different opportunities to choose from. So, with your experience now also leading the team of machine learning engineers, how do you get someone excited about your vacancies? Like, what are the aspects of the job that you focus on when pitching the opportunity to candidates?
I see three axes. So the first one is scale. People are generally very interested in scale. You learn a lot. You learn a ton by building a piece of software which needs to scale. And by scale, I mean, okay, so I build a lot of like stuff on the side, like toy projects on the side over weekends and stuff. But they don't. I don't get to I don't get to know how that thing is going to work at scale, because that's not just doesn't, it's not the purpose. I build a cat classifier, I don't know, whatever, just for fun. And but then I don't have like 1 million people pinging my service every second, and I will never know how this is going to work. So a key differentiator is scale. So when you tell people, hey, so you're going to build something which is going to be used by 150 million people, because that's the range where like Bolt operates at. Well, that's something that you don't find everywhere, and that's the kind of learning which you cannot find everywhere. And that's point number one. Point number two is the uh, being some sort of like independent thinker, and being able to provide a level of independence in your work. So there's a big difference in. So I mean, we should you should hire senior people because they tell you what to do, right? It's not like you telling them what to do,
Mm,
right? You hire senior people because they know better, at least I mean theory, and that they should guide you through towards your goal. So something really important is empowering people with decision making, right? And the power of being wrong, but then at least like trying it, so there's also something super important, because then when I tell people, hey, look, we have projects, of course, and so we have a roadmap and just those are the projects we want to work on, but honestly I don't know how to solve those projects, because otherwise I will probably already have solved them. Right? So we need someone to tell us how to solve them. So the moment you join, you're going to be like a full owner of that project, and you're going to do whatever you want, and just make sure that it's delivered. So when people like are empowered, that's also like something like very very important. And then the third axis is just interesting projects. So I know that is a little subjective. There are a lot of people who are super interested in healthcare, and there are other folks who are interested in finance. This is very personal. So I but it's still like very important to me, for example. So I read something and then just, okay, this is amazing. I'm interested in computer visions, and then when people pitch to me, you're gonna perform some sort of like face matching, face detection at scale, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I want to do this, right? So or like read first name and last name from a piece of document which is blurry and dark, and then people just took whatever photo like on their phone, like super low bandwidth, and there's kind of challenges. uh, do you want to get a shot at it? I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, man, why not? I mean, this looks amazing.
mm,
So yeah, I would say like interesting projects, empowering people with decision making, and scale.
mm. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, with these three applied, there is, it must be easy to get new joiners. However, with the talent shortage, still you may not have the enough candidates or not enough candidates, and that probably happens in a company even like Bolt. So with your experience, what are some of the challenges also for hiring managers, or team leads here like yourself? Like what are some of the challenges that recruiters can help you with?
I'd say so. Recruiters generally like to do the first screening, so they're the ones who are going through the actual candidates funnel, right? And so I'd say that it's very important that when a candidate guy gets to us, to hiring managers, it should possibly be like the best quality candidate that I get to look at, just in the interest of time and while optimizing just resources. Obviously, I could do that myself, but then I would be said I would probably stuck in interviews all day long, which is probably not a great use of my time. So recruiters need to be good at selecting, right, or pre-selecting. And then how do you do that? Then I would say that, a big signal, at least like for me, is side projects, or at least like what is a candidate built that is visible. And I know that this is okay. This is like a weird take, because then there is like a lot of hot discussions online about, okay, wait, does that mean that you are giving some sort of like advantage to people who spend their weekends on weekend project on side project? Like, no, 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 no. I don't, like, absolutely not. In some cases, it's literally just being able to describe well and in detail which kind of projects you've contributed to in a previous like working experience. Um, so that is number one. And number two, definitely not the frameworks, not the technology. So technology, these are like things that can be learned. So anything can be learned, right? For sure. So I'm referring mostly about like something that the person has built in practice, because to me that signals attitude, right? So the moment you're telling me, hey, I did ABC and I obtained D, and it took me X, and it was like bloodshed, and I managed to get there because it was complicated, and I had to go through all sorts of issues, and there was issue one, and I solved it with this, and was issue two, and I solved it with that, and then after issue two, nobody really realized it, but there was issue three which popped up, and we figured that out, and I did that. So that's something that shows ownership and attitude, right? And then it's like, okay, actually, there was at some point it was issue four, and we figured out that we need this new framework like to solve issue four, and nobody knew it, but I learned it, and as bam, we figured it out. That's that's what we need, right? So I think that if the recruiter is able like to select and to remove the noise as much as possible, and to actually filter out like those kind of folks, that helps, that helps a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you mentioned some of these frameworks or program languages may not be as important in the grand scheme of things. So, what about the cloud providers? For example, when there is someone who has been working with AWS, is it relatively easy to transition to GCP or Azure, or is this something that people usually stick with?
Oh, no, 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 it's super easy actually. So so if someone is comfortable with a cloud provider, then you can be fairly sure that they'll be able to deliver in any other cloud provider, any other different cloud provider. Like the those folks are just changing names for the exact same services. Well, of course, I mean the frameworks are slightly different, so you might have rules which applied like to one cloud provider then compared to another one. But for example, I've used like the three of them. I've used like Azure, Google, and AWS. Like proficient on AWS, but like just a little bit of a beginner on the other two. But at the end of the day, if you understand what virtual machine is, what permissions are. Like permissions are probably like the craziest, right? Because you have to figure out exactly, okay, which kind of services you need, and how and what. At the moment you understand like those, Then the rest is just literally going to the docs, like reading and then trying.
Mm.
Uh, so I don't think like it's a big deal. And also now it's there is a ton of info online, which is accessible to everybody, without an internet connection, about how to do stuff in all sorts of framework, all sorts of cloud providers, in all under all sorts of conditions. So again, I get back to the attitude, right? So if you want to get it done, you get it done.
Mm.
It's not a problem of a skill set. A skill set, you learn it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, still thinking about some of these roles, we were discussing data analysts, data engineers, machine learning engineers, but now there is also this super cool hot role, AI engineer. So is this just a new buzzword, or is it a real role that has some real meaning on the market?
I don't know what that is. I I have to admit. So yes, I agree with you. So there's also like LLM engineer, I think, whatever. But yeah, it's we use LLMs, like for instance, I mean, we are trying to. They come with their own challenges. Um, I don't know, honestly. I think that we have a team of machine learning engineers, and the moment it's just a tool. So the moment we realize, oh, how about using GPT-4 and OpenAI for this? Can we try it out? I mean, yeah, let's go. Like, do we need an LLM engineer to do that?
Hmm.
No, like that's quite the opposite, actually. It's the process of machine learning and AI, and actually the evolution, and where this is going towards. It's actually going towards democratization of those tools. So the moment you are telling me, oh, I need an AI engineer to do this, then you're pretty much signaling that either you know what you're doing, or you're some sort of like gatekeeping like the knowledge. They are very easy to use. Like, they're almost too easy to use, right? They're like this the problem of people, actually the opposite problem of people, like worried that their jobs are going to be taken by those, right? So when you tell me that you need like someone specialized in LLMs to get them to work, uh, then I have my doubts that you ever tried them. Because if you ever tried them, then you will know that they're very easy to use. Then I'm not saying that they're very easy to productionize and use them effectively at scale. Uh, but that's why you need a machine learning engineer. The same guy who was able like to scale cat classifier on 100 million customers. I'm pretty confident that the same guy is probably gonna be able to figure out how to scale like GPT-4 on 100 million customers. So the tool is different, but the problem is the same.
Interesting. And what about some of these big companies? They have the best AI engineers on the market, right? They poach talents. They pay them $1 million a year just to stick with them. What is left for the rest of the market? I mean, do other companies still need these very advanced machine learning engineers? And looks like yes, because you at Bolt you have them. But what about the kind of average company that hasn't reached the scale of Bolt? Like, will they also need the machine learning engineers, or do they just use some of the existing services from Amazon or Google or Microsoft Azure?
So uh, let me take a little bit of a tangent, like, here for 1 second, just to clarify a point. So something I didn't mention, I think I probably should have, like, since the beginning. So our machine learning engineers, or at least like probably 99% of the machine learning engineers I know, they are applied machine learning engineers. So, and by applied, I mean those are folks who are using
Hmm.
machine learning uh, tools and frameworks. They're not creating their own, right? So they're not research machine learning engineers.
Yeah.
So again, if I said 99%, because that the remaining 1%, they're probably like the ones that at OpenAI or Amazon or Google, they're actually doing the research, which one day will turn into a product which an applied machine learning engineer will use.
Mm.
And the difference is staggering there, right? The difference actually is mostly in the ROI, like the return on investment you want to have, like on a project. We just, for example, like for, let's put it this way, face matching. You know, um, did we build an internal face matching system at Bolt? We didn't. Why? Well, because like to train up a face matching system from scratch at the level of accuracy that you need, you probably like need like 10 people for 4 years, you know, like
Mm.
to collect the data and train and retrain. But that is, you know, one API call away, which costs like a thousand of a cent per call.
Mm.
So why would you even bother? You know, so just don't go there. Like solve problems that matter to your company and that you cannot buy services for.
Mm.
So that is like a big difference, you know, which is very important. So I suspect that those folks who are getting paid $1 million a year, they are likely like in that 1% like level of folks who have, you know, 4 PhDs or whatever. Like they know
Mm.
they are actually building the machine learning stack,
Yeah.
whereas us, we are using it. And I don't think that it's I mean, it's not really a great deal of difference. um it's just like a different job,
Mm.
honestly. And each company does it according to the level of the maturity of their product and whether it makes sense to do it or not. In
Mm.
our case, for instance, like we at some point we scale, there are pains that you have to solve internally. There are models which we used to buy from external providers, and at some point what you see is that, you know, traffic goes up and then costs goes up as well, because you pay for API call. Even if you negotiate like your rates, you're still going to go up. So at some point you're like, okay, wait, can we do anything better here? So okay, let's invest 6 months and two people in rebuilding that thing, because at
Mm.
some point you will see traffic going up, and when economy of scale kicks in, you will see, like, you know, your costs going down. But that's totally dependent on the team, on the situation, financial situation of the company, and the financial situation of the team, also the ROI of the team.
Mm.
So to address your original question, which is like what's left for middle-sized companies, um, I mean, there is a lot which is left. Honestly, I think that it's like there are very very few people that are capable of building those kind of functionalities. So those kind of like new breakthroughs in machine learning. And I know it's probably for a reason that they are, you know, getting paid 1 million, and they're, you know, operating in this like research heavy and focused labs and teams in some sort of like company.
Mm.
For the rest, there is like a ton of products to build. There is a ton of products to build. There's just there's just not enough time. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think that the moment you hire someone who wants to build, who is hungry for learning and building and finding solutions, then that's the guy who actually adds business values. This value. That's the guy who brings dollars in to
Mm.
the company, into the business. So it's just a matter of finding them.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you mentioned this applied versus research machine learning engineer, because often people don't realize that there is a difference. On job descriptions, there is usually just written machine learning engineer. And it also reminds me what's going on in the web development space, based on what you mentioned. In web development, there are these frameworks like React or Angular or whatever, and then there are some people who do this research and they create these frameworks, and then other people, the 99%, they just use the existing frameworks. So with machine learning, it looks like it's pretty much the same, just the framework is somewhere in the cloud, run by
Yeah,
Amazon, Google, or other cloud providers.
exactly. And to us, just to add like
Mm-hmm.
a little note here, I think like to us it's kind of a red flag, if you are too research heavy, because at some point we are. I mean, a company needs to make profit, so if you tell me, oh yeah, I'm gonna build this thing, just give me 2 years and it's gonna be done. And it's like, no, 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 I mean, it needs this to be done in 2 weeks, you
Mm-hmm.
know so how can you make it done in 2 weeks? Are you able to cut corners? Are you able like to just get an MVP out, to test it quickly? I like, oh, no, 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 I like to build my own neural network and frame from scratch. Well, like, to me
Mm-hmm.
it's like a no-go. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'm sure you have your awesome skills, just go work somewhere else. I mean, it's not
Mm-hmm.
like the type for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually really important. A completely different mindset, a completely different way of working.
Mm-hmm. And we can actually use this bridge to the interviewing process, because what you kind of mentioned helps you to filter some of these good fit machine learning engineers. But what are some other aspects that you look at? How do you even taking a step back with regards to tech recruiters doing the pre-screening? Like, how can they pre-screen candidates better for someone like you?
Uh, there is definitely something which is really important to us, which is the product mindset. So and being very business minded. So at any point in time, any project you're gonna work at, you're gonna work on it at both, but I suspect in most companies, is there for a reason, right? Is there because you're solving a problem. And so we should beware from folks who are solving a problem just for the having fun with tech. You're solving a problem because there is one, and because like your customers are coming first. So what are your customers complaining about? How can you alleviate those pains with a solution? Um, and so if you don't think that way, then you're gonna get very easily into the weeds and to do sort of like articulated, very complex solutions, just because you're losing track of what you're trying to solve. So if what you're trying to solve is one API call away, just do it. So we're looking for pragmatism and someone who's always kind of challenging what's the ROI of a project. So like, okay, so I'm gonna do this thing, but what is it worth? Like, is it really worth like employing like 3 weeks of my time? Is there anything better with that we can do? And challenge that status quo, and always like thinking, okay, actually, like this thing is. What if we change a little bit, like the point of view, and start it over, and probably like solve an entirely different problem. So it's always being very pragmatic and very business oriented, and also very data driven, right? So something which is very very important um in any screening is, okay, like, tell me what you solved, how you solved it, and what was the outcome. And the outcome needs to be measurable, right? So you just don't tell, hey, there was this problem and I solved it, and now everything is faster.
Mm.
By how much, and why do you care? So like, you can say, okay, actually, I made this API 1 second faster. It was like 2 seconds, now it's 1 second, so like it improved by 50%. Okay, do you care? Was it a problem? Well, first, was it a problem? And yes, if was problem, by decreasing like the latency of to 1 second, so by 50%, what's the business impact? So do you actually help anybody? Because maybe that's that API is going to be used downstream by another API which takes 5 minutes to run.
Mm.
So nobody cares actually, if it takes
Yeah.
2 seconds, 1 second, or half of, because then there's going to be a bottleneck downstream which takes
Mhm.
5 minutes, right? So you always have to think, how is my project going to be wired up in the grand scheme of things? if you don't think that way, that also to me like it's kind of like a red flag, but probably yellow flag, not necessarily red flag, because you can teach that kind of skill set according to the seniority of the person. But that's also something pretty important. So like pragmatism, business oriented, and customer focused,
Nice, nice. Well,
data driven as well.
this is a great input. I could listen to you for the next hour or so because we still haven't covered a lot about data lakes and all these cool new fancy things in the data world. But also, I want to be cautious about your time because I'm sure you have some other meetings and appointments running up soon. But before we wrap it up, is there any kind of final piece of advice that you would like to share with fellow tech recruiters or people who are getting into the data engineering, machine learning space?
I would say if you can, it sounds a little crazy, but if you can, try building something yourself. It has never been as easy as it is now. Uh, to really like the barrier to get into tech is extremely low. If you just want to do something, you can. So before uh, interviewing someone about JavaScript or about face matching, go on AWS and like spin up a service which does it. You're gonna find like tons of blog posts, more or less approachable, who do that. We explain how to do this. Just do it. It will give you a gigantic edge, because then when you're talking to someone and that person is going to tell you, oh, like face matching is incredibly hard, I have no idea how crazy it is, then you're going to tell him, oh, dude, I mean, I just did it yesterday, it took me 5 minutes because I used the service. And another guy was like, oh, all right, yeah, right. So it's just it will help you like a lot. So and also like it's in those any kind of conversation. So I would say like the biggest advice I will give you, just like go out there and build something very simple. Honestly, it doesn't need to be like crazy, but just get accustomed to the tech, get accustomed to the frameworks, and get better a little bit every day. And like those kind of effects compound, and at some point you'll be interviewing as a real tech hiring manager, and the screening would be like very very high quality. So
Yeah.
hiring manager will thank you for that.
That's a great one, and I'm sure once people really get their hands dirty with some cloud providers and some of these services, they will be surprised by how easy this is really. Because yeah, when I was playing with the AWS console, I mean, I was like really surprised that it's so approachable. Everything is trained. There are lots of blog posts and
Yeah,
how-to guides on how to start. Even these simple repositories on GitHub that you can just clone and run. It's just really crazy world that we live in.
absolutely. Yeah, just go ahead and build.
Awesome. Cool. And where can people find a bit more about you? Where can they connect with you if they want it?
So I'm active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So also like feel free to shoot me an email
Mhm.
if you want. I mean, I think I didn't really pay attention, so probably like my details, my contact details are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So just Google me, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna find my email. It's fine. It's totally fine. Just ping me if you need to. And I try to be as responsive as possible. So I was there. So
Mhm.
I also also like to be there for ones who are just getting started and need a piece of advice every now and then.
That's so cool. Well, I'll include the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well. So thanks a lot for sharing all these insights and tips. And we probably in a few months or half year we can uh, dive deeper to some of these new trends, and I'm sure we would have a lot more to talk about.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank a lot.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you. Bye.